In finance, there are predators and there are prey. For years, I was the hunter, until I became the hunted. Now, I'm something else entirely. My name is Marcus Reynolds. For over a decade, I was a specialist in distressed assets and short selling, finding overvalued companies, betting against them, profiting when reality caught up to their inflated promises. It made me wealthy, respected, and more than a few enemies. But I had rules. I never targeted healthy companies. I only bet against businesses built on lies, the ones cooking their books, hiding their debts, or selling snake oil to unsuspecting investors. I wasn't just making money. I was correcting market inefficiencies. Then I encountered Helios Energy. Helios claimed to have developed revolutionary battery technology that could store renewable energy at half the cost of conventional methods. Their stock soared 400% in 6 months. Every major investment bank gave them a strong buy rating. Their CEO, Eleanor Vance, became a media darling, the face of green energy's future. I didn't buy it. Their numbers didn't add up. Their technology patents were vague. Their demonstrations were carefully controlled. So I did what I always did. I researched, I analyzed, and I took a significant short position against Helios stock. That's when everything changed. 2 days after I published my research report questioning Helios's claims, my investment firm received an unannounced visit from federal agents. Anonymous tips had accused me of market manipulation, insider trading, and securities fraud. Within weeks, my clients were fleeing. My trading accounts were frozen. The SEC launched a formal investigation. Financial news networks that had previously praised my analysis now questioned my methods and motives. It wasn't random, it was coordinated, and it was devastating. By the time the investigation cleared me of all wrongdoing 8 months later, my reputation was in tatters. My firm had collapsed. My $40 million personal fortune had been cut in half by legal fees and the exodus of investors. And Helios? Their stock reached new heights. I should have walked away, retired to some quiet beach. But as I sat in my half-empty Manhattan apartment, scrolling through another glowing profile of Eleanor Vance, something hardened inside me. They hadn't just attacked my finances. They'd attacked my integrity, my purpose. They'd made it personal. And I was about to return the favor. The first thing you learn as a short seller is patience. The market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. So I took my time. I had to be meticulous, thorough, bulletproof. Converted my home office into a war room. One wall tracked Helios's public statements, press releases, and earnings reports. Another mapped their executive team, board members, and major investors. A third followed their stock price, trading volumes, and options activity. I hired 3 former colleagues, an accountant, a chemical engineer, and a corporate investigator to help me. We worked under the radar, using shell companies and consultants to hide our connection to the research. For 6 months, we dug. We analyzed every financial statement, every patent filing, every promotional video. We spoke with former employees, suppliers, and competitors. We even ordered their products for independent testing. The deeper we went, the clearer the picture became. Helios wasn't just overvalued, it was a sophisticated fraud. Their battery technology worked in demonstrations but couldn't scale. Their production facilities were largely empty. Their reported revenues included projected sales that hadn't materialized. Most damning of all, Eleanor Vance and her executive team had quietly sold millions in personal shares while publicly talking up the company's prospects. But exposing them wouldn't be enough. They'd already proven they could weather negative reports. They had powerful friends, institutional support, and a compelling green energy narrative that investors desperately wanted to believe. I needed to do more than just reveal the truth. I needed to engineer a situation where the truth couldn't be ignored, denied, or buried. As I reviewed the evidence one night, I noticed something interesting. Helios had a major debt covenant coming due in 3 months. If their stock price fell below a certain threshold, they'd have to repay hundreds of millions immediately or face default. That was my opening. I began by establishing a new identity in the investment world. Using a portion of my remaining capital, I created a small but legitimate green energy investment fund called Sustainable Future Capital. I hired a respected former energy analyst as the public face, while I remained the silent partner. Through this fund, we began making small, strategic investments in Helios's competitors and suppliers. Nothing suspicious, just enough to gain access to industry events and information. Meanwhile, I reached out to several financial journalists I'd worked with in the past. I didn't share my findings yet, but I planted seeds of doubt about various aspects of Helios's business model. Not enough for stories, just enough to make them curious. The most crucial part of my plan involved Helios's upcoming demonstration of their next-generation battery technology. They'd announced a major event at their headquarters, with industry analysts, media, and investors all invited to witness the unveiling of a prototype that would revolutionize the energy storage market. Through my industry contacts, I learned that the prototype was experiencing significant problems. It worked in controlled settings, but failed under real-world conditions. Eleanor and her team were panicking, knowing they couldn't deliver what they'd promised. That's when I made my move. Using a series of anonymous tips and carefully leaked documents, I ensured that 3 major financial news networks would have investigative reporters at the demonstration. I also arranged for a respected battery technology expert to attend as a consultant for my green energy fund. The stage was set, but I needed one more element to ensure maximum impact. I reached out to a former Helios engineer who'd been fired after questioning the company's claims. He had documentation showing that Eleanor had known about the technology's limitations for over a year while continuing to make grandiose public promises. For a consulting fee and a guarantee of anonymity, he agreed to share his evidence with select journalists, timed to drop the day before the demonstration. Then I waited, and I prepared for the counterattack I knew would come. The evening before Helios's demonstration, the first expose hit the financial press. Exclusive. Internal documents reveal Helios Energy's battery technology failures. The stock dipped 7% in after-hours trading. Eleanor Vance immediately issued a statement calling the report baseless allegations from a disgruntled ex-employee and promising that tomorrow's demonstration would silence the doubters once and for all. But the seed of doubt had been planted. The next morning, 2 more reports emerged, each with additional details. Helios stock opened down 12%. My phone rang at 6:30 a.m., a number I didn't recognize. Marcus, Eleanor's voice was ice cold. I know you're behind this. Hello, Eleanor. It's been a while. Call off your dogs. Now, or I'll make what happened to you last time look like a gentle warning. I kept my voice level. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a private investor these days. Don't play games. We both know what you're doing. I've got a board meeting in 20 minutes, and I'm going to tell them exactly who's orchestrating this hit job. Before you do that, I said, you might want to check your personal email. I sent you something 5 minutes ago. The line went silent for a moment. What is this? She finally asked, her voice suddenly uncertain. Those are the documents you signed, authorizing the sale of your personal shares, while instructing your PR team to release statements about how you were all in on Helios's future. That's securities fraud, Eleanor. And unlike your accusations against me, this is real. Where did you get these? Her voice had lost its edge. Let's just say, not everyone on your team is as loyal as you think. Now I suggest you focus on your demonstration today. I hear you've got some exciting technology to unveil. I hung up, my heart pounding. She would try to come after me, but it wouldn't matter. The machine was already in motion. The demonstration was scheduled for 2 p.m. By noon, Helios stock had fallen another 6%. The financial networks were running stories about the growing controversy. Trading volume was 10 times normal. At 1:15 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from my inside source at the demonstration site. They're scrambling. Prototype failed final test, trying to use older version as backup. Everything was falling apart for them, exactly as planned. But I had underestimated Eleanor's desperation. At 1:30 p.m., Helios issued a press release announcing a strategic investment from Global Energy Partners, a respected international conglomerate, with a quote from their CEO praising Helios's technology. The stock instantly rebounded 15%. My heart sank. This wasn't part of my intelligence. Had I missed something? I frantically called contacts at Global Energy. Within minutes, I had confirmation. The announcement was premature. Discussions had occurred, but no deal had been finalized. Global's CEO was furious that his name had been used. As the 2 p.m. demonstration approached, I placed the final piece of my plan in motion. I'd arranged for 3 major financial news networks to go live from the event, ensuring maximum exposure for what was about to happen. The demonstration was a disaster. The prototype failed spectacularly on live television. When they tried to switch to the backup, it performed even worse. Eleanor attempted to spin it as a development challenge that all breakthrough technologies face, but the damage was done. As the stock plummeted, Global Energy issued a statement denying any investment agreement with Helios, calling the earlier announcement premature and unauthorized. Within hours, Helios shares had fallen below the critical threshold for their debt covenant. They would now have to repay hundreds of millions they didn't have, or face technical default. But the real bombshell came the next morning. One of the financial journalists I'd been feeding information to published a comprehensive investigative report revealing everything: the technology failures, the misleading statements, the insider stock sales, and the fabricated investment announcement. The SEC announced a formal investigation by noon. Class action lawsuits were filed by afternoon. Helios's stock was in free fall, eventually losing 94% of its value over 3 days. Eleanor Vance resigned to focus on cooperating with investigators. The board appointed an interim CEO who immediately announced a strategic review of all operations. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness washing over me. I had placed a significant short position on Helios stock through anonymous offshore accounts. By the time the dust settled, I had made back triple what I'd lost in my original ordeal. But this was never just about money. 6 months later, I sat in the back row of a federal courthouse as Eleanor Vance pleaded guilty to securities fraud and making false statements to investors. The judge sentenced her to 7 years in prison and ordered her to pay $180 million in restitution. The company that had once been valued at over $4 billion was sold for parts at a bankruptcy auction. The revolutionary battery technology was exposed as marginally better than existing solutions, with fundamental flaws that made it commercially unviable. Several financial analysts and fund managers who had aggressively promoted Helios faced career-ending scandals when their conflicts of interest came to light. 2 board members were indicted for insider trading. As for me, I never returned to short selling. Instead, I used my restored fortune to establish a foundation that funds independent research into questionable publicly traded companies. We provide our findings to regulators and the public, free of charge. Some call it vigilante justice. I call it market correction. The financial world runs on information. When that information is manipulated, investors suffer. Sometimes, the system needs people willing to stand outside it to keep it honest. In the end, Eleanor's biggest mistake wasn't creating a fraudulent company. It wasn't even attacking me personally. Her biggest mistake was thinking she could silence the truth. The market always corrects eventually. Sometimes it just needs a little help. I made my choice.